Welcome to my review of Zodiac for the PC. And I believe this is a PC exclusive, but I'm not completely sure. I think it was. This is version 0.10.4. And the reason I mention the version on this is because this one seems to have stages still in construction as it's an early access game. So I did beat this version, but it is possible that they're going to update it later. As it says in the description at the end of the game. So they may add stages later, and if they do that, I'll probably post an updated playthrough for the next version, but in the meantime, I would say I completed the game since this is all there is to it, for now. But there is still a pretty full game here, so that's what I'm going to review. It took me around 2 hours and 13 minutes to beat. And this game is kind of like the old Star Fox for Super Nintendo, but with much better frame rate and much smoother. So it's mainly in that style, but it has a little variety. You get a little bit of Space Harrier style, and there's also a bike sequence where you're grounded and you're stuck on the ground. You can't fly around, and you got to kind of go through a linear stage. It's kind of like a rail shooter still, but you're like glued to the ground since you're on a motorcycle. And then the other variation is there's like some free-flowing kind of stages. There's one stage where you can kind of hover around and you can go whatever direction you want in a really small open-world kind of map. Very small, but it gives you total freedom to move around. And in that stage, you have to take out these generator type of things, these rods, and you have to take them out. You have to take them all out within a time limit and then beat a boss. Now, if you fail it, like I did, you still can go on to the next stage for whatever reason. So it doesn't seem like you even have to complete those. Or maybe it's because I ran through the whole timer and it just lets me go because I survived for 5 minutes. I'm not sure. But very easy since I didn't even have to complete. I didn't even have to kill the boss. I died and I still proceeded. So that's how that works. And there was another objective-based stage as well, I believe. But it was a little bit of a different style. So it does mix up the gameplay a little bit, but most of the stages, you saw a Space Harrier style stage, and most of the stages are in this Star Fox style, which is a third-person rail shooter style, but just old style, like the Super Nintendo style, from that Star Fox. And if you hold down the fire button, you'll get you can lock on. Depending how long you hold it down, you'll get more lock-on missiles on your enemy. And it indicates it well by saying, max and such when you have it maxed out. So you won't hold it for too long. And if you mash the button, you can shoot your lasers. You can upgrade these attacks as well with various power-ups, like a laser upgrade. You can get extra missiles. You have a regular missile you can fire too. And you also have a dash move that's kind of limited. That's where your thrust meter is on the right. I think it may regenerate over time, but you can use that to speed ahead, which is less useful on boss fights and more useful on the actual, auto-scrolling stages. Even though this game, it shows that you're still auto-scrolling during the boss fights, you're not really. It's really a fixed fight. But in these stages, you're actually moving forward. So you can use the dash to get ahead of obstacles and things like that faster. So this is the motorcycle-style sequence. And of course, the game can be a little janky because it is based off of that Super Nintendo style. And the biggest issue that you might have, or that I had, was that sometimes your vehicle will obscure the bullets a lot. So it can be hard to see around your vehicle, but that's just kind of part of the game. And it gets better with practice of the stage layouts and starting to learn, the enemies. And eventually you'll learn how to take out certain enemies pretty quick before they can fire too much. So that will help a lot. You get used to the spawns and things like that. So that will help. But it can still be an issue for a while. And this stage was pretty challenging since you're locked to the ground, so it was a pretty challenging stage. But nothing crazy. The game is pretty moderate in difficulty, but of course that can vary. It just depends on your overall skill level, and especially with these type of games too. So, you could be really good at other types of games, but maybe this one throws you off because it is a little different if you don't really play these type of games that much. But it's really, I would say, a pretty moderate difficulty game. I did have some trouble on some of the boss fights, mainly. Like the stages, I don't remember really dying during the stages. At least not too much, a little bit. But usually you get checkpoints in the stages. And you usually get a checkpoint close to the boss if you go through these rings. Certain rings in certain areas. But the bosses sometimes took me a while, and I would sometimes lose, several lives to the bosses and have to restart the stage. The way it works is, this is an objective-based stage that I was talking about, where you can fly around freely. You can see it's a very small open world, as I called it. It's really just this circle here. But it's the only time in the game, really, that you have freedom to fly around like this and destroy stuff, from what I can remember. But when I failed it, I still proceeded to the next area. And there was 2 stages like that where I failed the objectives, but somehow it let me advance to the next area. So I guess maybe that's for a better ending or something. I don't know. But there was no ending when I beat it, because there was still stages under construction, as it said. This was the final boss for me. This is all that was available. So, but I still felt like it was a full game. You know what I mean? It still felt like a full game to me. For this kind of old school game, it felt decent length. I thought it was fine. It's only a little bit over maybe an hour and 10 minutes if you don't use any continues. Or it could be faster depending how many lives you lose. Maybe you could beat it in 40 or 50 minutes. But it's a decent length for an old school type of game. Star Fox was never that long. I think Star Fox is a lot shorter, but it has multiple routes. But you get a little ranking at the end of each stage. And the way it works is you have 3 lives to beat each stage. If you run out of those 3 lives, you go back to the title screen, but you can just continue from the last stage you got to in the stage select. They're shown as these planets on this little string here. So you can just select which planet you last, died on, and you'll start that planet again, but with your 3 lives again. So you get a fresh start at the beginning of the stage. And there are checkpoints in the stages by flying through certain rings. So that's how that works. You can see here they said, thanks for playing the early access, and they're going to add more stages. So if they do, I'll probably play through the stages. And I'm not going to consider that as another game beaten. I'm not going to say version 0.10.4 or some shit and count that as a different game. What I'm going to do for my kill list, which is mainly if you've been on the channel, that's mainly what I work on, filling out my kill list, which is my games beaten spreadsheet, and it's separated by systems and shit like that. And for this game, I would just add it as a note in the description under that entry for the game. I'm not going to make another entry for that and consider it another game. I would consider that pretty cheap. But I will beat whatever new stages come around probably, and I'll make a note that I completed the extra stages from those versions, and I'll post that up as well. If you have any questions, let me know, and thanks for watching. Yeah, little thing I forgot to add, the score for the game. I would give it a 7.5 out of 10, quite a good game.